Hello, compliments of the new year. My name is Diabo Sita. This is Your Money on Market Sense. So failure to invest for your children's education could lead them to dropping out of tertiary or even school as parents battle to cope with the escalating costs of education. So education inflation usually increases at a much higher rate of about 9% per year than the normal inflation rate. This is obviously putting more pressure on parents as well as caregivers to put more money aside for their children's education.
Investing in your child's education is a long-term goal that should be done as early as possible. Experts say investing as soon as your child is born will improve your chances of growing your investment. Failure to invest in your child's education could mean borrowing money at a high interest rate at a later stage. Many students have dropped out of tertiary as their parents battle to pay for their fees.
If you can start, for example, investing or saving when a child is born, and you invest for their tertiary education, let's say college or university, if you put away that money every month, you only actually have to invest half of the money that you need to fund that tertiary education. Your investment returns will take care of the rest.
Financial experts say it will cost you on average about 1.5 million rand to educate your child from primary up to tertiary level. And if your child goes to a private school, the figure is likely to be more than 3 million rand. You need to invest in growth assets for your money to grow. And just putting money in a bank account or an educational policy will not give you good returns.
Be careful of education policies. Unfortunately, what often happens is the person selling those products, they usually take quite large upfront commissions or fees that is deducted from the investment. And sadly, a lot of those investments are not tracked over time. So they become irrelevant. And as you say, then you get to that time and it's not nearly what you expected.
Government uses a means test to determine who qualifies for NSFAS funding. If you do not have sufficient money for your children's tertiary education, they run the risk of being expelled. Some schools still withhold children's reports when the fees are outstanding, even though this is against the law.
Some of these policies of about 300 Rand or 500 Rand a month is actually just enough to pay for stationery or perhaps maybe a deposit for a tuition fee. So it requires a bit of creativity to be able to save if you are going to be financing your child's education, because not all children perhaps will qualify for NSFAS financial support.
The cost of quality education for your children often comes at a huge price tag. There's no argument that with good education, children can acquire rare skills that this economy needs. This will help improve their chances of being employable and earn a decent salary. Naledi Matlapeng, SABC News, Johannesburg.
For more, I am joined by Kagisho Mahura. He's the director at Gradidge Mahura Investments. Kagisho, thank you so much for joining us. So what's the best way to calculate how much one will need to cover a child's school year on average?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me, Diabo. I mean, the easiest way to do this calculation is to look at one, where do you want your child to go to school, either primary or high school or tertiary. You can get those figures today. All you need to do is then project what those figures are going to be at the different stages of the different stages of the child, and then we can do the calculation today exactly how much primary school is going to cost you, high school and tertiary. And as they said in the clip, the inflation rate for education is normally somewhere between 8 and 10%, so around about 9%. So that's the best way to actually calculate, and then work backwards as to how much you should invest today, so that you have the money that you need at the stage when your child is actually going to the different stages of their education.
Yeah. What's your preferred pick for investment or savings vehicle for this purpose?
Look, for us, really, the vehicle that we prefer is unit trusts. You know, and in the clip, they spoke about one other option, which is normally your education endowments. Those have got their own problems, which is, as they said in the clip, often a little bit more expensive, a little bit more opaque in terms of where the returns are coming from. The most flexible and the most clear-cut and the most, what we call the most flexible one in terms of clarity of where the returns are coming from is the unit trust investment. So that's the one that we we choose. So we say to the parents, decide how long what you want to invest, because if it's for shorter term, like for primary, you can choose lower risk unit trusts. For longer term, like high school and tertiary education, you can choose your more equity-based unit trust portfolios. They're much cheaper and they're much clearer in terms of where the performance is coming from.
Yeah. Do you think there's a place for collective savings, such as stokvels, particularly for education purposes? Do you think that people can start conceptualizing, our viewers, they can start conceptualizing around those?
Yeah, look, 100%. I think if you've got a group of people that you can trust, so maybe you can start at a family level, where you're, as brothers and sisters, you can club together. You've got similar age kids. You can put your money together, because of course the more you invest together, the lower the cost often become over time, and the greater the return becomes in absolute terms. So, and you can also help each other out at different stages where one can afford to contribute and the other one can't, and then but it doesn't break the momentum of the investment. So clubbing together to invest, yes, it makes sense, but you've got to do it with people that you trust. Because once you go into this investment and then others start breaking the contract, it becomes a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot of emphasis on tertiary education funding, of course, because it's much more expensive. However, we perhaps do not talk enough about those parents who have the young ones who started grade R or grade 1, and those who are starting grade 8, starting high school. On average, how much would you say one parent, given the circumstances, of course, that consumers are facing, can save out of their salary just to meet, say, stationery and uniform costs?
Look, it's a very difficult one to answer, because it depends what schools the children are going to. So if you take a typical Model C school, which is kind of your higher end government schools, in a year, you're probably looking at somewhere between 30 and 60,000 rand of what you call it, of school fees, and possibly in the region of about 5 to 10,000 rand in uniforms and stationery and extramural activities and trips and all of the school trips and all of that. So if you can put aside on an annual basis somewhere between, let's say, 5,000 rand for stationery and extramural activities, I think you could get away with covering the bare necessities, excluding the tuition costs themselves.
Yeah, and of course, Kagisho, the best time is always to start now, right?
Look, it's always the best time is to start now. The earlier you start, the better. But often the biggest problem is, even with those that start early, if they don't do the right calculations, they end up putting in so little into very expensive products, and they get disappointed in the end.
Yeah.
The best way to deal with this is to do your homework upfront. Understand the numbers, understand how much you're investing and where you're putting it, and then you won't be disappointed at the different stages of the chance. We've met too many people who said, yeah, but I've been putting in 300 rand a month for the last 10 years into this product. But where's 300 rand going to take you if you want your child to go to a private school?
Yeah.
That's not going to work. So the best thing is, the biggest problem is we don't do enough homework upfront. We don't do the calculations, and we don't invest enough to get the amount of money we want at the different stages of the child's development.
Kagisho, always great speaking to you on Your Money on Market Sense. Thank you so much for your advice and time. That was Kagisho Mahura, is the director at Gradidge Mahura Investments, talking about how you can actually start saving for your child's education, so that you don't have these issues year after year.